Hello, dear Jeffrey. How are you doing?
Good morning or good afternoon from Baltimore, Pir Saab. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And I was looking in to your social media stream. You were very optimistic about the Democrats, and finally, you people won.
Yes, we have. We won what the Trump administration's own cybersecurity top expert said was the freest and safest and securest election in U.S. history, and President-elect Biden and President-elect Harris have won by a clear electoral and popular vote victory. Of course, that's yet to be officially certified, but in the American tradition, they have won. And just yesterday, the Trump administration, granted approval for the transition funds and modalities to begin operating. So this is a very good thing for America and the world as we transition to the new administration.
But I guess President fired him for saying this.
He fired Christopher Krebs, the head of CISA, the cybersecurity agency. That's correct. He did.
He is the guy. He can do anything. He can do anything on Twitter.
That has been his preferred medium of communication, and it's been a very effective. It's given him an international megaphone. But speaking of social media, Facebook and Twitter have already announced, or Twitter has announced, that it is officially transferring the POTUS, the official President of the United States Twitter account, to President-elect Biden, and that will take effect presumably on Inauguration Day. So President Trump will of course have his own extensive personal social media following. That will continue.
Yeah. And Jeff, as many people know that you are a senior diplomat, just retired from your job, and you served in Pakistan for 2 years as Director of Community Engagement. Very important position. How did you find Pakistan?
Pir Sahab, I loved Pakistan. I just found it one of the most interesting and challenging and frankly difficult countries I've ever lived or worked in. And as you mentioned, I recently retired from my role in the U.S. government as a foreign service officer. But yes, Pakistan is an amazing country with a young population and a huge pool of young and up-and-coming and existing leaders from diverse communities. And despite all of Pakistan's security and economic and sociological and cultural challenges, it's an amazing country with amazing resources, some of which it's using well, some of which it's yet to start to use well. And it was just such a pleasure and honor to serve in Pakistan and work with community engagement leaders and communicators, such as yourself. It was one of the great professional and personal and spiritual highlights of my life to get to know this great country. And I miss it. And I hope to get back as a civilian someday.
Yeah, we would love to host you as a civilian and as a friend here in Pakistan.
Thank you.
Now the security situation in Pakistan is going very well. I wonder, is still my country allows Americans to visit freely in all parts of Pakistan, or I'm not aware about it. But as far as I know, which are the areas are open for Americans, we would love to take you there, and you will enjoy it, because I know that you know Urdu very well, by the way, right?
I do know some Urdu. I studied it before I came. Unfortunately, I've not used it in 2.5 years. So, मैं अभी कुछ Urdu बोल सकता हूँ, but that's about it. Maybe no.
Sahi. This is very good. And enough. If you can ask someone to express that you are hungry or you need water, that's enough. And if yeah,
Ye kafi hoga. That's good to know. I could probably
ये बहुत काफी होगा.
सही, सही.
सही. So how do you see situation? What is your analysis about the situation in the region? Let's begin from Pakistan.
Certainly.
What do you think that new administration, how they will treat Pakistan? Now it won't be Twitter administration anymore. So things.
No, that's a very apt question, and again, just speaking from my own personal perspective and not having followed events in Pakistan perhaps as closely as I should have been in recent months. What I would say overall is that I would imagine the Biden administration's approach to Pakistan will, in many ways, be one of continuity, because as you know, the current administration conducted an extensive security review of relations with Pakistan in 2017 under then ambassador, when the embassy was under the leadership of Ambassador David Hope at the time. And I would think the basics of the relationship, at least initially, the administration would keep them the same. As you've mentioned, the Biden administration has already announced a veteran team. Anthony Blinken will be the Secretary of State. John Kerry will be the climate envoy. This is going to be an experienced Foreign Service team that has decades. Each of them, or most of them, have decades of experience in the world, and including Pakistan and the region: Pakistan, India, China, Afghanistan, and the like. So I think, in short, at this early stage, because it's still almost 2 months until inauguration, I would project that the Biden administration will at least in the first months of administration, maintain the basic tenets of the security and assistance relationship with Pakistan. The Biden administration will recognize, as the current administration has, that Pakistan is a key ally to regional security and stability and increasingly and eventually prosperity. So I think in many ways continuity of the best aspects of the current administration will be maintained. And then as the administration fully appoints its undersecretaries and assistant secretaries, perhaps its new ambassador for Pakistan, I think then they'll undertake a review with the experts on the ground, my former colleagues at the U.S. mission, to determine where programs can be improved, if not all American military personnel and advisors, if possible by the end of this year, which of course is only 5.5 weeks away. So I think that I'm sure that Afghanistan will be. I'm sure that the Biden transition team is carefully analyzing and following the situation with Afghanistan, because it's still, as you know better than I, being right there, next to her, that the security situation in Afghanistan remains dangerous and unpredictable. So I'm pretty sure the Biden team is looking at that closely, and I can't predict what they're going to do, whether they're going to reverse or change the current administration's policy, but I would guess that they would at least seriously look at maintaining at least some American military strategic security advisory presence in the country. But I don't envision them like annulling any agreement with the Taliban or the Afghan government under the current administration. I think all of that is under review, and it's probably too early to say, but I would imagine that down the road, maybe sometime well into next year, the Biden administration will have a different and more strategic and thoughtful policy toward and presence in Afghanistan than perhaps we do now with the current administration. But it's too early to tell in many ways.
That's right. And how you see the situation with Iran? Because Iran is very crucial. Policy of Obama administration in the past and the President Trump's administration were totally east and west in directions. So one was going here, and second one is taken the route totally opposite in case of Iran. So how you analyze that? What is going on with the Iran deal?
I think you've named the country and the policy area that's most on the mind of many current and many former diplomats such as myself, because Iran continues to be in many ways the single most important country and player in the Middle East and the region. So again, I think it's too early to say with any certainty what the incoming Biden administration will change or will do. But I think when you look at the team that's coming on board, I think what you're going to see with Iran is what you're going to see in a lot of other, or even all other, major foreign policy areas. You're going to see a return to the stability and the working together approach of the Obama administration, because many, in addition to President-elect Biden, Secretary of State designate Blinken and others are very much part of the team that crafted and executed the Obama administration's policy toward Iran, which of course led toward the JCPOA agreement with Iran to lift some sanctions in exchange for halting and in many ways reversing Iran's nuclear energy and nuclear weapons capability. I think we'll see a return to these discussions. I think we'll see a return to engagement with Iran. But I think the concerns that Iran presents as a theocratic regime with some extremist policies and tendencies, as well as some expansionist and confrontational priorities, through its proxies in the Middle East. The concerns about Iran's international and military behavior and support for terrorists and other groups, those will continue. And the Biden administration, I think, will engage in its initial months in a very careful consultation with European allies, especially the JCPOA agreement partners. Regime has already started out setting conditions for a resumption of the agreement or a return to the agreement, the JCPOA agreement that the U.S. has left. I don't think we'll see any major change from the messes that have been created under this administration. But I think we will see an approach with Iran and in sincere terms for a negotiation, for a return to working together instead of working against each other.
Yeah, and I guess there will be more concerns of the players of Middle East, like Saudi Arabia and Israel. Now they are coming closer, and they both have reservations with any deal with Iran. And I guess Netanyahu is showing some muscles to the new elect administration that, okay, these are my reservations, guys. So don't even try to think about it.
So yeah, such hey. That's and I was just reading a very good opinion piece in the New York Times about this morning where the administration's rapprochement, or not even rapprochement, there's been this significant establishing of formal ties between a small but growing number of Arab states and Israel, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and of course, just earlier this weekend and this week, as you mentioned, Netanyahu met with the Saudi Crown Prince and others, even though that was a secret meeting. Supposedly, it was anything but secret. So I think initially, I think one of the areas of overlap and continuity between administrations, even in administrations that are as different politically as the Trump administration and the incoming Biden administration, you're going to see overriding superpartisan concerns and priorities about security in the Middle East, which is still such a volatile region, even though ISIL activity has gone significantly down. Syria remains a tinderbox. Lebanon, Yemen, and other countries remain security and political and socioeconomic challenges for the U.S., for Israel, for Saudi, for Iran. So I think we're actually going to see some overarching continuity, at least initially, in Middle East policy. And although, and this is just a side comment about Israel and Palestine, I think what we'll see on that front is, I think we'll see a Biden administration approach that takes into account, that returns to a recognition of the Palestinian problem and the fact that Palestine is still not a state, and Palestinians still are suffering in many ways under Israeli rule and occupation. I think you'll see a return to that sort of a more balanced view of Israel and Palestine, while the Biden administration will continue to engage with Israel as one of its most important allies and still the only functioning democracy in the Middle East. You won't see this completely one-sided, uncritical embracing of everything that the Netanyahu government does, including expanding settlements, which the Trump administration, of course, has either embraced or ignored or turned a blind eye to. I think what you'll see with the Biden administration is a return to a more tough love and constructive and critical approach of the relationship with Israel, where as with any ally, we're being honest with Israel about things that it's doing wrong or doing in contravention of international law, as well as things that's doing right. So I think we'll see a return to more balance, at least on that question.
And there will be some tough questions for new administration as well, because Democrats have, that case will be important. And that case is haunting.
There you are.
Yeah. So I'm sorry for this inconvenience. As we use with the Tom the Don today, have you seen the picture? And he just shared on, he is sitting on a couch in Bangkok and asking to title that picture. And I wrote down in comments, Tom the Don. Yeah.
Oh, how fun.
Thomas. So there is a famous term in Pakistan, jugaad. So I want to fix it and to have a jugaad to continue this mission. So yes, Jeff, I cannot understand when Americans, they talk about democracy, we love to hear it. They talk about freedom, we love to hear it. But their closest allies, Saudi Arabia, UAE, there's no question of democracy and freedom there, but still they are allies. And there is no pressure at all. If you try to put pressure, they damn care about that pressure, because they know that nothing is going to be changed.
To some extent, I agree with you. I think America as a superpower since World War II in particular, since World War II and through the period of the Pax Americana, through the Clinton administration and right up to the present day, again, with the liberty to speak as a private citizen, I think America has had a very mixed and inconsistent and sometimes hypocritical record of practicing what it preaches. I think it all too often has practiced the opposite of what it's preached. So, when as a U.S. diplomat with the State Department, I was always required, and I was always happy as my professional duty to tout the values of American culture, society, and democracy, and tell America's story to the world from, the positive U.S. government program engagement point. Now, as a private citizen, I can say that, your question or your statement about America's somewhat hypocritical role in the world is there's quite a bit of truth to it. We do engage with some very unsavory allies, or at least allies such as Saudi Arabia, who do things that are very much counter to democracy, freedom, and freedom of expression. And one of the things I'm very excited about with the incoming Biden administration and a return to more normalcy and less hypocrisy in our foreign policy is that President-elect Biden and his team will be bringing back many of the best experts and aspects of the Obama administration, which, while not perfect, I think will do a much more forceful job of actually practicing American democracy and freedom and not just preaching it. So I have hopes. I have high hopes for America on that going forward.
We wish you luck. We wish you luck. And as America is not which doesn't matter they don't matter in politics. It's the America, the USA. So everything matters in world politics. They are superpower. They can change. And America has a very relation with China. What about that relationship? At least while sitting in Pakistan, living in Rawalpindi, I would say that you have a harsh relationship with China. I will always see it a loving relationship. We are buddies with China.
Sort of. No, I remember too. I remember during the 2 years I was in Islamabad, the relationship with China was very much in the minds of not only America but Pakistan, and with the then emergent One Belt, One Road initiative, from which of course Pakistan has received billions of dollars of grants and loans from China. But no, I think to address China and the incoming administration's approach, that is in many ways going to be the single most important and difficult task the incoming Biden administration will have. Again, I'm already comforted, even though we only have a few key names. I'm comforted by the fact that we have such a veteran and experienced team, including experience with China, coming into the White House and coming into the Departments of Defense and State and Homeland Security, because China is, as Pakistan knows, China is the most difficult and challenging of international actors. China is a superpower. The U.S. is not the world's sole superpower. China is very much the equal of the U.S. in terms of its ability to project power for its own benefit and its own ends. And some of what China does is good. Some of what China does is not good. China is looking out for China first. China is at the end of the day, we need to remember that China is a communist dictatorship. I don't say that with venom dripping from my mouth. It's just a fact. China is a corporate communist state, and it's adapted very well to 21st century technology and shifting sands and shifting security and economic situations in its region and around the world. And I think China has a clear vision of where they want to be, who they want to be and who they are and how to engage with America. And I think for the last 4 years under the Trump administration, America has kind of flailed about. Sometimes President Trump has called President Xi a great man and a friend. Sometimes he's called him, much worse things. But the fact, I think the Chinese have looked at the chaos in American governance over the last 4 years and said to themselves, this is all the more reason China needs to step up on the world stage and increase our influence in key countries like Pakistan and like its neighbors, Vietnam and Cambodia and Thailand in Asia and the Latin American countries. China, and to a smaller extent, Russia, which we haven't discussed, have been rushing in to fill the void of American governments, of American policy strengths and pursuits in the East Asia Pacific region. I think, our backing out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership was a terrible strategic blow for America. Again, that's just my opinion. But no, I think China is going to be the number one preoccupation, not the only preoccupation, but the number one preoccupation of the Biden administration, as it should be, because China is encroaching into every area of security and economics and communications and digital technology, and in some ways very harmful and intrusive. No, so we need to engage China on every front. We need to sort of encourage them where they're being positive. We need to try to counter them and in some cases stop them where they're being harmful and destructive. It's going to require a whole of government approach to better manage the relationship with China, especially after these 4 years of chaos.
Yeah. And did you notice a very important event? It just occurred during your election campaigns in America. And I guess the timing was chosen very intelligently by Azerbaijanis to attack on army.
Oh,
So the first war in modern history where there was no USA and its involvement, because everyone was busy in Trump-Biden fight.
Yes, Pierce, it's a fascinating. I did follow the news, again, not as closely as I should have, but I mean, that was a fascinating war. First and foremost, for the reason you said, is that I think it's a harbinger of regional and bilateral wars to come. Azerbaijan effectively used drones. From what I read, they used drones for the greater part of their strategic and military victories in that war. And I think we're going to see more of this. Again, this is one of many challenges facing the world, and this is where it's going to behoove the so-called superpowers, the U.S. and China, and to a lesser extent Russia, to be able to talk to each other and cooperate rather than confront each other. And as you said, for basically the Trump administration since late summer, early fall has been completely consumed with the effort to reelect Donald Trump, and they've been neglecting areas on all fronts: the coronavirus epidemic, pandemic in the U.S., outstanding strategic concerns. Donald Trump in last week's virtual summit with the G20 partners, he left even before they started discussing climate change to go play golf. I mean, that's just, but no, this war, between Armenia and Azerbaijan, I think is emblematic of the kinds of what we'll see more of, or what we'll see more of if the U.S. doesn't re-engage with the world and with our partners as well as our competitors. I mean, and that's, as long as the U.S. remains a global superpower, it will need to engage with China and Russia in all ways, so that they can coordinate their responses to regional security threats like this war between two countries in a key region right next to Iran. So I think that war is a warning to the world and to the U.S. about what could come.
Basically. And by the way, you mentioned just about the drones Azerbaijan used very effectively.
Yes, sir.
I guess those were Israeli drones, right?
I read that somewhere. Yeah, I haven't read a lot of data on that, but I did read that in at least one news report.
So this is again a very unique kind of composition that Israel helped a Muslim state in a war. And I remember that a few days back, I saw a picture in it was a balcony in Baku somewhere, and they
Yeah.
were displaying the flag of Azerbaijan, Turkey, Pakistan, and Israel when they
Wow.
were celebrating the victory. So yeah,
New friends,
like
new world, new friends.
it's kind of new regional order taking place, like Turkey and Israel together, Pakistan and Israel together in Azerbaijan. So it's kind of a new composition, but
Hmm.
in musical way, it was beautiful composition.
I know you're a great appreciator of good music, Pir Saab. So I think that's an apt thing for you to say. No, I think that just further illustrates. I didn't see that photo, but I certainly read reports about Israel aiding Azerbaijan. Again, I think this is the new world order is that people are, that nation states as well as regional groups and ethnic groups seeking a nation state identity, they're going to form alliances where they can. I think the old patterns of, communist versus democracy and secular versus religious or theocracy or theocratic states, I think all of this is shifting around. I think Iran is an example of an old guard, a previous world order, and I think there'll be incredible pressure and in some ways I hope successful for the Iranian regime to change and become less of sort of an old school, in some ways medieval theocracy, even though they definitely do have some aspects of democracy and modern governance. But to go back to this question, I think this is what we're going to see. I mean, the world used to, in America, when I was a kid, you sort of grew up with the choices of ice cream, chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. Now you go into your grocery store and supermarket. Even in Pakistan, I would go into the
Yeah,
supermarket in Islamabad. You had 80 different flavors of ice cream to choose from. You
true.
could mix and match. And I think geostrategically, this is what countries and actors are doing now. They're sort of
Mm.
not, I think the old questions of, well, what does this country stand on Palestine? And again, I don't mean to dismiss the Palestinians' cause and rightful quest for
Mm.
rights and a state of their own, but countries like Azerbaijan and others are going to be saying, who's going to help us in this new world
Mm.
order? We don't have these it's a multipolar or non-polar world where we're going to seek influence and help and strategic alliances. I think. And that's why, again, and sorry for getting philosophical, but I know you as a Sufi philosopher, expert extraordinaire, can appreciate one getting philosophical at times. I think one of the spiritual existential challenges to the emerging New World Order is that people are just going. I think the breakdown of sort of traditional alliances and traditional nation-state relationships and governance is, and I think ISIS has shown the way. I think this recent regional war where Azerbaijan used Israeli technology and then showed the flag from Baku. I think all of these are pointing to a world that's much more fluid, that
Yeah.
replicates the changes we're seeing in the digital or cyber world, where people just interact freely and according to their interests, because humans will always act in their own interests. And I think we're at a critical juncture in world history where we either refine the nation-state-based world order and the United Nations model of world governance or management of nation-state relationships, or we move to something much more chaotic and unpredictable. And I don't know where we're headed. I think this question you ask is the biggest question mark of all. Will the old models of international and regional engagement be refined, or will they be replaced by something new and perhaps very unpredictable and chaotic? I think it's an open question.
Yeah. And by the way, this war situation between Azerbaijan and Armenia is creating a situation gradually and slowly in Pakistan as well, because there is a huge pressure now on Pakistani establishment, military, and the government to reclaim its position in Kashmir, as Azerbaijan did it.
Yes.
And you know the Mujahid culture here.
Yes,
So
sir.
every Mujahid is very much ready to participate in the war against India. And there are opinions and news that India is, they are, on their side, they are preparing for a small scale or large scale war with Pakistan.
Yes, sir.
Tension between India and going on. It is going on. The weather changed, so the news are not coming regularly from that front, but still they are
Yes.
in tension. So this is this will has an impact on our side as well.
Indeed, and while during my 2 years in Pakistan, much of our attention and concern was drawn to the disputed Kashmir region, and as you say, I think the Kashmir remains what they call a tinderbox, just for the reasons you cited. I think Pakistan and India both have reasons to incite and inflame their respective positions on Kashmir and its ultimate status. And, without going into the policy details of what each country is doing or preparing to do, because you know those better than I think my general sense is that I think Pakistan, and this is where I hope America's best foreign policy and regional expertise and peacemaking and peace-building expertise comes to bear fruit, is that it's in the interests of India and Pakistan to turn down the tension and find areas where they can agree on Kashmir, as well as other outstanding issues between them. And again, as you know better than I think Pakistan and India have so much more in common than what divides them. But obviously there are military and political and security elite interests in fomenting and aggravating these differences so that they can, as you say, the Mujahideen element in Pakistan, as well as the Hindu Mujahideen.
Yeah, now they are there.
The Hindu nationalists. Now they are there.
Thanks to BJP government that they brought this aspect of the society in front of people.
And again, it's kind of a natural or psychological organic consequence of years and years of conflict without resolution. So, I mean, you either have to say that both India and Pakistan are to blame or neither is to blame. But the reality is that both have roles of blame in continuing and inciting and inflaming bilateral tensions over issues like Kashmir, because there are solutions to be had, but neither country really wants to. But each country, for its own reasons, wants a different solution, and they seem to be moving apart. And I would agree with you. These days, India seems to be moving in a more extremist direction. But as we know from Pakistani history, Pakistan could always also move in a more extremist direction. I think we're seeing a period of relative stability in Pakistan under Khan Sahib's government, but there's no guarantee that will last, because Pakistan is still a fractious and divided country, and India is too. But India is in many ways. It just is in many ways. It's more unified and powerful than Pakistan, and I think more prepared if and astaghfirullah, that there's
Hmm.
another regional war, because neither country wants that. And the only winner will be China. If India and Pakistan go to war, China will be there to reap the spoils. And I don't think
And
either
the whole
country.
world will suffer because these both countries have the nuclear capabilities.
Yes.
And this is, if you see, you have been here in these countries and you know this region very well. It is such a bad kind of flashpoint for destruction,
Yes, sir.
starting from India to Pakistan to China and upwards Russia, for nuclear powers in a row.
Agreed. I just personally, again, now that I can speak personally, it's kind of liberating. I honestly wish that the nuclear weapons had never been created. I think they're a
Yeah.
terrible scourge, and I think the ever shaky, the increasingly shakier policy, the MAD policy, the mutually assured destruction, it's still holding place, but it's rickety. And we've seen, I mean, if anything, the advent of some aspects of authoritarianism in America under the Trump administration show us the dangers of countries with nuclear arsenals, with enough weapons, with enough nuclear material to destroy the world 7 times over. Yeah, and as you say, the crux of India, Pakistan, Russia, and China all having nuclear weapons in this region, and in the case of Russia and China, intercontinental, and Iran is supposedly
Yeah.
was developing ICBM capabilities. North Korea has ICBM capabilities, intercontinental ballistic.
Israel is there in the.
Israel, yes, Israel's undeclared nuclear. So it's not really whether to manage these, this aspect, this nuclearized aspect of the countries that have nuclear weapons, but how to. And this is, yes, it's just, this is the nuclear question is another reason for India and Pakistan. I mean, in my heart of hearts, in my dream world, India and Pakistan wouldn't become one nation. That's the time for that was the 1940s, and the line, the lines were laid out, fatally or fatalistically. But I think the conditions are still there. The basic conditions for an Indo-Pak alliance are very much there, and I think an India-Pakistan rapprochement would help all of the outstanding questions that face the two countries' growth and development, as well as the region's safety and security. If an Indo-Pak rapprochement and alliance would address the nuclear thing, they would share nuclear capabilities, and they would make their weapons both more potent and safer. They would pose a real stability balance, a better stability balance to both China and Russia, their combined economies, and the trade. I mean, the trade, as you know better than I, Pirsam, the trade that could and should flow between these two nations, with a shared history and culture and identity and so many other things. I think an Indo-Pak alliance, rapprochement alliance, would be the greatest Christmas or Ramadan or any type of gift you could name, the world could see. So maybe that's the hope I would express, which is far from your question about nuclear, but it involves encloses the nuclear question as well.
Yeah, because in any kind of adventure, if they just try two toys on one another,
yes, sir,
everything will be finished. And by the way, where the security is concerned of nuclear weapon, we have Oxford graduate, we have educated person with many skills now running the administration, and where there is the question of BJP, I wonder how world see it. But still, I guess I'm a person who advocates for peace.
Yes, sir.
I think that war is not an option. Let's give love a chance. Let's give peace
Oh,
a chance.
I
Oh
agree.
yes. Oh
I agree.
yes.
Muhabbat.
Mohabbat. Mohabbat Fateh Alam.
It's true. It is true. And, you know, on that same philosophical note, human beings were our own worst enemy. We
Mm,
contain bad and good tendencies, and we see this play out on the world stage. America, as you've seen, took a turn toward the worse. We embraced, or at least a sufficient number of voters allowed the Electoral College to elect um, a leader, a president with authoritarian and dictatorial and destructive tendencies, and focus on, in some ways, the worst aspects of the American psyche,
mm, mm,
selfishness and anger, and placing retribution against perceived enemies above reconciliation and working together, you know, causing disunity and chaos over creating
mm.
unity and cohesion. So America, I think if we learn anything from these last 4 years about the chaos in American governance, is that no country is immune. And it doesn't matter whether you have an
Yeah.
Oxford-educated president one year or a Cambridge-educated, prime minister in another country, or because we've seen, in Britain, when Britain was an empire,
Mm, mm.
subjugating subjugating an empire, ruling and subjugating an empire from the eastern to the western horizons, including what would become India and Pakistan. Those British leaders were all Oxford and Cambridge educated too, and they did some
Yeah.
terrible, terrible things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
having a college degree from a named university doesn't guarantee, certainly doesn't guarantee um, that love will win. But we hope.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
But
That's
we
right.
hope that it will.
That's right. And now coming on some personal talks. How many countries you have visited till date, and how many left on the map?
I think
Uh,
I've lost count, but I think it's up to 60 that I've visited, at
mm,
least spent a day, or not just transit at the airport, but either lived in, actually
mm.
visited, saw something of the countries. I think it's up to 60. So that leaves what, about 140 or 150 that I haven't visited?
So now those are on list.
Those are on the list. I'm
Okay,
57
that's
years old, so I'm not sure I'll make all of them, but inshallah, they're all on the list. And Pakistan is very near but revisiting Pakistan is near the top of the list. But
inshallah,
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 but
inshallah.
inshallah, yeah. So many countries left to see, and I'm excited about that.
Hmm, that's very wonderful. Thank you, Jeffrey, for your time and for joining us and for giving us an insight of your experience, based on your experience about this region and the current developments which are taking place in America. And I wish you a healthy, wealthy, cheerful, happy life. And I know that America is suffering from Corona nowadays, and I wish all humanity a peaceful life. Everyone has a right on for a peaceful life, and we can pray, we can hope, we can wish for them.
Inshallah, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much, Pir Saab. It's always a pleasure and an honor to speak with you and have a chance to speak to your audience. So thank you. And I wish the best for Pakistani democracy and freedom and security and prosperity. And with leaders, community and spiritual leaders like you, I think Pakistan has a bright future ahead of it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz. Thank you, sir.